Man, I gotta say, this whole thing about Bill Belichick being left off the Hall of Fame on his first ballot is just madness. And we're gonna actually talk about that, but we got a couple of other things that we gotta get into here real quick. Of course, my name is A&J. We are here doing some sports talk, and of course, as I've been talking about recently, the coaching carousel is in full effect, and now there are only two remaining head coaching jobs available, that of the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, of course, interestingly enough, there's a lot of personal aspects to both of those openings that I've discussed in my Broncos Talk video, but we'll save that for all that and leave that to be what that is, especially with more Broncos talk yet to come. But I want to talk really quickly about the Cleveland Browns hiring Todd Munkin, excuse me, former Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. I feel like this one's really interesting because I'll be perfectly honest, it's not that the Ravens weren't great offensively or even good at times, but I'm not necessarily sure that it would necessarily warrant someone from the Ravens staff necessarily to get a head coaching job, but I'm not going to fault it. I mean, of course, a lot of the stronger candidates, namely, of course, what am I trying to say? John Harbaugh, uh, Kevin Stefanski, amongst others, they've already been snatched up. Our own Vance Joseph is pretty much all but confirmed to stay. Hopefully, the same will be the case as far as, of course, Davis Mills. But, like I said, that'll be more for Broncos talk. I didn't want to get too much into that where that was concerned. But one thing I do want to say where Cleveland is concerned is it's going to be interesting to see how all that works out. They've literally got Deshaun Watson, Shador Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel at the very least to work with as far as quarterback situation is concerned. I'm not real sure about the run game. I mean, that's probably something that could use a little help. We'll see what the Browns end up doing on that. They do actually have two first rounders in this year's draft, so definitely going to look to see what they do there. But another thing about that is that honestly, this is going to be really intriguing because now this leaves John Harbaugh without an offensive coordinator for the New York Giants. And again, I don't mean to get so much into Broncos talk, but the Broncos did just fire Joe Lombardi yesterday. Maybe that's a move that John Harbaugh makes. I don't know necessarily that that's going to be the case, but again, that makes for at least two different situations that are going to be really interesting to watch, especially in the coming days. But it seems as if now we're getting to the point to where we're nearing the end of the coaching carousel, and again, with those two remaining jobs up for grabs, I gotta say, with all the hirings that have taken place, particularly Mike McCarthy out in Pittsburgh, which I felt like that was somewhat of a no-brainer in and of itself. I mean, Pittsburgh guy, I think it's been brought up if you watch enough of the Pat McAfee show. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really see anything wrong with him being looked at as a head coaching candidate in terms of Mike McCarthy. I think that it'll be a really good new voice in that Pittsburgh locker room, and it's going to be interesting to see how all of this happens, especially in that division. Um, Also, with the fact that Kevin Minter being the new head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, how wild is it? I just realized this. How wild is it that the only remaining head coach is in Cincinnati and Zach Taylor? And honestly, I felt like he could have gotten fired. And there were people that had the argument that all four of those coaches could have been gone, and it damn near came down to that. But of course, they're giving it one more go with Zach Taylor, and of course, Munkin in Cleveland, Minter in Baltimore, along with McCarthy in Pittsburgh. That's going to be some pretty interesting shit to see. this upcoming 2026 season. But of course, along with that, there was also, as I mentioned in aforementioned Broncos talk video, Joe Brady has actually been promoted as from the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills to now the new head coach of the Buffalo Bills. This coming roughly a week or so after Sean McDermott was fired, after losing to who else? The Denver Broncos. But anyway, it's really interesting for me because not only the fact that that was one of the places that Davis Webb was actually a consideration for that head coaching spot, I felt like if it wasn't going to be Brian Daboll, Joe Brady had to have been a no-brainer in that situation. I mean, obviously worked very, very closely with Josh Allen to this point and is going to continue doing so, obviously. Not only that, but I mentioned it in the Broncos Talk video yesterday. Josh Allen, I believe, is about to be 31 or something like that. And this literally reminds me of what it was like back in the 90s. Well, actually, it was the late 80s going into the 90s, where then Chicago Bulls head coach Doug Collins was fired. They elevated Phil Jackson, and the rest is literally history. I mean, I don't think I need to go into too much detail about that. I very easily could see that being a similar situation here. Do they ring off 6 out of 8 years? I don't necessarily know about that. I don't think so because the rest of the league is too damn good. But for me, I feel like this is ultimately the key to Josh Allen getting to and probably even winning the Super Bowl. First one in Bills history, which kudos to them if that's actually the case. But one thing that I do have to say where that actually is concerned is it was something that was much needed. I don't think that they were getting too much further than what they had with Sean McDermott. Never mind any aspects of how people may feel about him as a human being or whatever the case may be. There was a lot of that was discussed. But in all honesty, I think it was pretty obvious even before there was a notion to fire Sean McDermott that if there was anyone that could be in place to take the Bills to a higher level than what they had already been, it was likely going to be Joe Brady anyway. I mean, I just don't see any way around that. But we'll see how all that works out. I'm going to go ahead and end it here on a coach who, obviously, a lot of these guys that I'm talking about now actually kind of pale in comparison to. And like I said, I mentioned it before, we got to talk about Bill Belichick getting snubbed for the Hall of Fame. I mean, somebody needs to help me understand how the hell that makes sense. And of course, I've seen all the tweets. Well, maybe not all the tweets, but I've heard about a lot of them. And I don't have any other way of saying it other than they're all right. You know, they're all spot on correct. There's absolutely less than zero excusing this, especially for the fact that we're literally talking about 8 Super Bowls, 2 with the Giants, 6 obviously with the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. And of course, I've seen a post somewhere on Twitter where it was mentioned that it was more Brady than it was Belichick, which to me, I'm personally of that mindset. And I don't take anything away from Bill Belichick at all. He's definitely fantastic. I mean, not only again having 6 Super Bowls with Tom Brady and the Patriots, he was the defensive coordinator for 2 of the Super Bowls with the New York Giants with the actual greatest player of all time in Lawrence Taylor, at least as far as I'm concerned. But we can leave all that up for debate. My thing to this is if this is what happened to Belichick, what winds up happening with Brady? Because there's no reason he shouldn't be first ballot as it is. Definitely the greatest quarterback of all time. If you want to argue him the greatest player, by all means, I'm not gonna say no to that either. To me, it is Lawrence Taylor, but I mean, that just depends on what your actual criteria is and any other substance that you may have for the argument. But realistically speaking, Bill Belichick should be in this particular class of Hall of Famers. Now, I can understand the notion of if you've got guys that are looking to get in and you want to use your votes for those individuals, especially if it's their last chance. All right, fair. Don't have a real problem with that. But at the same time, snubbing a Bill Belichick is absolute madness. And that's probably just putting it mildly. But that's all I got on that for right now. Let me know what y'all think about that down below. What do you think about these new coaching changes or these new hires for all these head coaching vacancies? And I mean, I'm not the only one that's thinking this about Belichick, right? Y'all know what it is. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And then, of course, if you want to see more videos like this, definitely hit that notification bell. In the meantime, between time, this has been your time with AJ, and I thank you for spending it with me.